I moved to Austin and my mom insisted I buy a home. And at 19, I did not want to buy a home. I had
Smart lady.
no interest in this whatsoever. And, granted, prices were a lot lower when I was 19. All right. Today I am talking all things investment strategy with real estate. I'm here with Jamie Lindsay Donahue, who's one of the top agents from the Greg Cummings Group real estate team. She's been investing in real estate for quite some time now. Welcome. It's great to have you here, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Jamie holds a unique situation in that she, within our real estate team, she's probably one of the most well-invested agents. She's been investing in real estate since her mid-20s. So tell us a little bit about, how did you get involved? Where did it start?
Yeah, absolutely. I will have to give credit to my dad for where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
He calls himself a landlord, but he has been a local San Diego investor for like 50 years now. And he was just so awesome to my sister and I growing up. He really taught us so many things about being an owner and being an investor. Instead of just handing things down, he really taught us the ropes. And I feel like it sparked just a lot of interest and in both my sister and I, and we've kind of run with that baton, and I feel like he gave us the confidence to do that by teaching us, and we both feel so grateful for that. So both of us through that lens have been able to go out there and invest and grow our own portfolios.
That's awesome. And it actually reminds me of getting started myself in real estate at the ripe age of 19. Now, this wasn't an investment property per se. I mean, I guess you could look at it that way. I moved to Austin and my mom insisted I buy a home. And at 19, I did not want to buy a home. I tell you what, I had no interest in this whatsoever. And she insisted. And, my grandmother, bless her heart, she had passed away. She didn't have a lot of money, but she left me like $5,000. And, granted, prices were a lot lower when I was 19. I bought my first home. I rented rooms out to friends for below market. And that's what started my portfolio. So common thread there that I wasn't even aware of. But yes, I know your dad, and he's a great sounding board for an investment. So where did it go from there for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So where it really kind of shifted into strictly investment properties was about 4 years ago now. I purchased my own 3-unit building here in San Diego, and that kind of started my portfolio. And now Rob, my husband, and I, we own about 15 doors here in San Diego that, we own and manage ourselves. And we've just learned so much over growing and going through that experience. But it really started with that first purchase for me. And I look back on that and have just learned so much. Mm-hmm. Went through the purchasing process, which, I've been through before and obviously lead buyers through all the time, but I went through it on an investment scale, went through that right as COVID was happening, and there was a lot of things going on with, will people pay rents? Will they not? Mm-hmm. Are my tenants going to pay rent? Went through that. Went through renovation mm-hmm. process, went through, eventually into building out that lot a little bit more, which we'll talk about. But it has just been such an amazing experience for me. I feel like I've truly learned so much going through that myself, and can really just practice what I preach. I feel like if my clients want to start investing and want to know how to start or have questions, I grappled with it myself. So I really feel like I can share an immense amount of knowledge just based on personal experience.
Yeah. No, and that's good. It's that firsthand experience that you've gone through that then you can share with future clients or current clients, et cetera, on the process and what you've gone through, what you've experienced, et cetera. So fundamental to be able to share that.
Absolutely. And we've talked about this before, but obviously San Diego is an expensive place to live. Mm-hmm. It's an expensive place to buy. The purchase prices are high. And if you're looking at getting into an investment property, you're probably evaluating, how do I do that? Right. How do I start? So we were kind of talking about this, how did I start and how can you start? It's the same for anyone out there. There's a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of creative ways that we can, help walk you through. And it's great if you have cash sitting there and
Right.
you have that ability. Awesome. But
Well, what if you don't? I mean, say,
Exactly.
I'm average Joe and
Yep.
I'm not sitting on a wad of cash.
Yep.
Like, what would be an ideal step for me to take?
yeah, and I feel like that's most people,
Right.
especially in San Diego, where you would really need a lot of cash to put down. It's 25% of the purchase price here for a strict investment property. So if you're an average Joe, and if you were like me, what I did was I was living in my condo that I owned at the time. Interest rates had gone down a lot. They were really, looking good. They were sub three. And so I did what's called a cash out refinance. I refinanced my condo. I had a lot of equity in my condo, which, in San Diego, usually people are sitting on equity depending on when you purchased. And I refinanced at a lower rate and I took the excess cash out that was available to me based on my equity. So with that, I was able to, use that as the down payment on my first investment property. So I did not just have a huge chunk of change sitting there, but I was able to do something creative and smart and responsible for my financial situation, and that's how I did it.
That's awesome. That's a great avenue to take. Pull equity out of the asset that you already have, and then start growing from there. And for another avenue you can take with this as a buyer is there's a FHA loan that you can utilize and actually buy between 2 and 4 units. And a great strategy a lot of people overlook is you only have to have the 3.5% down. You buy something like a duplex. You live in half of it. You rent the other half out. That's going to help to subsidize your mortgage payment. And then you live there for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, you either sell it and take the capital gains from there and move it into your next property and do the same thing. Or if you have the ability, you actually hold on to that duplex, pull some equity out like Jamie's talking about. You buy the next one. Next thing you know, 10 years down the road, you've got 5 properties and 10 doors. So there are ways you can do that. You just have to get a little creative sometimes, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. The strategy that Greg just spoke about is huge. If I was sitting there and thinking I wanted to purchase my first home or my first condo, I would be going down that avenue 100%. I would be looking for a duplex that I could, afford. And in San Diego, there are so many amazing neighborhoods that have a ton of duplexes. North Park, South Park, University Heights, Claremont, Bayho, Pacific Beach. Like there's tons of areas where you can find duplexes, like they exist. And that's how you get in. You don't have to bring the 25% down if you're purchasing for yourself. And that way you're purchasing 2 properties and you can rent out the other side and it offsets your mortgage. And then like Greg said, you just continue on and eventually, hopefully own that whole property and can rent out both sides and, can move on to your next home. So that is...
It's a rinse and repeat process.
It's an amazing strategy that really should be explored more, and that's incredible. If you're in that stage where you're just starting to look for your first property to own, I would be going down that route. And there's other things too. I mean, you can do HELOCs, home equity line of credits. If you have a significant amount of equity in the home you already own. A HELOC is essentially, I like to think of it as a credit card against your house. Most people might think that sounds
right.
kind of like irresponsible, but if you use it responsibly and correctly, it's just another form of leverage. It's another form of a loan. And I've done that as well to build out a big project that we just finished on. And so the point of this conversation is you don't just have to have a huge wad of cash. There's a lot of creative situations out there, and we're happy to guide you through those.
Absolutely. So, obviously through this process of owning and acquiring these doors, and by the way, for the average person out there, when we refer to the term door, that means the actual unit itself. You could call anything from a single family home being a door to an apartment complex with 200 units being 200 doors, just so we get a little clarity on what that means. We like to throw these terms around, and sometimes we don't realize that average Joe doesn't know what that means. So, through this process of acquiring these properties, what are some things you've learned along the way? I don't like to say mistakes because within every mistake is a lesson that is to be learned. But what could you share that you've learned along this path?
Absolutely. There's so many things that I've learned. And even after I finish one thing, this is really funny, but just the other day I was showing my dad, we were walking through 2 ADUs that I just finished. And, not a critique, not a mistake, but just something to take with you and move forward and learn from. He goes, James, that's what he calls me. James, you have no drawers in your kitchen. There were 2 drawers in the kitchen. He was like, you need a bank of drawers. People have utensils. And so anyway, just going back, but you just learn something small or big along the way. But for the bigger picture, I would say expect it to not go as planned. Purchasing, going through the investment process, renovating properties. Don't think it's going to go perfectly. Don't think it's going to go as planned. There's going to be hurdles. Sometimes it feels like there's a hurdle every single day, but you will get through it. And I think the best mindset to take is to be just solution oriented. Maybe be pissed for a couple of seconds that something didn't work out how you thought it was going to, and then continue on of okay, well, how do we pivot and find a solution, or how do we pivot and do something new? Because just a lot of unexpected comes up. And one helpful piece, though, I would say is have some financial ability on your side. Have some cash, have some savings if you're going to go through this process, because things will come up. Maybe the building needs a new roof and you didn't know, or maybe there's a problem with plumbing and you didn't know, and all of a sudden, you're slapped with a bill that you weren't expecting. So I would say it's very smart if you're going to go down this road of investing to have some cash reserve, and just be able to go with the punches a little bit. And every process you go through, you will learn something new and you'll take it to the next, and that will help you grow.
Yeah, great advice for sure from somebody that is continually growing her portfolio. Now, I know for myself, as I went into this year and looking to acquire more properties, the answer was sitting right in front of me, and that's one of my properties that I currently own in Pacific Beach. Why not add ADUs? Now, ADU, what does that mean? Accessory dwelling unit. It's a very hot topic right now in San Diego. The laws are allowing to add these units to properties to provide more housing. As a property owner, it helps to offset the expense. Obviously there's a cost in building it, but generally that cost is recouped through the rental aspect of it pretty quickly. So I know that you have gone down this path because you've actually shared with me some tips and advice about where to go and what to do and how you did it. So tell us a little bit about your experience with accessory dwelling units.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much to know about ADUs. I am no expert, but I have walked through the process of building a few now. So again, I've learned a lot. We just finished building 2 ADUs. We're done with those, and we just got a third one permitted at a different property. So yes, we're stepping through this just like other people. And I would say kind of how I worked through it was, first step would be talk to an architect. You know a bunch of architects. I know architects. We have contacts for you if you're looking to kind of start to research that path and see what can be built on a property. You don't have to know that. I don't look at properties and know what can be built. But an architect can look at that for you and let you know, hey, you can build 2 ADUs, or you can
how much
build
square footage you can add.
Exactly. You can build X. So they will evaluate that for you. And then, once you acquire a property and you find an architect you like, they can draw those plans out for you. And the architect I use has taken it through the city for me. So she builds the plans with me, and we talk about, what we want, and she draws them out, and then she takes them all the way through the city until they're fully permitted plans. And one thing I know I shared with Greg a few months ago that I learned, there are companies out there that are all-in-ones. So they will give you plans. They'll build out your plans and tell you what you can build on the property. They'll draw those up. They'll take them through the city, and then they'll also do the construction because a big component is finding a contractor that is within your budget. You jive with. They get your vision. They're available, and it's hard to find those contacts. Everyone's busy, so these all-in-ones are probably a great thing for a lot of people. It makes a lot of sense to just walk through the process with one team. However, I did find that a couple of these companies that I talked to, if you walk through the plans and permit process with them, and then you don't want to hire them for the construction process, something happens, or
so there's a falling out, yeah,
or their construction bid maybe doesn't align with your budget. A lot of things happen. They then own your plans. You don't own them anymore. And I don't know if you have to, maybe some companies you have to buy them back from them, or you have to step through the process again with, start from ground zero, walk through with another architect. So I would just that was a learning, something that I learned. I didn't make that mistake, but I just learned it. So that'd be something I would share to make people aware.
Absolutely.
Own your plans.
Yeah. Am I going to own my plans or not if we don't move forward and complete the project?
Exactly.
Very important question.
Yeah. Own your plans for sure. But so that's where I started. Started with an architect, walked through with her. She took my plans through the city. I talked through a few different contracting teams and moved forward with one, and it's been great so far.
Yeah, and just overall too, it's a great strategy. I know, looking at the numbers for me, adding with the present the way the market is currently with rates and the cost of construction and everything else, just with rates alone, to buy an investment property and make it cash flow is pretty tight right now.
It's tough.
But even with the construction rates the way they are, for me, building out these 2 units actually will end up, and it's nothing substantial, but it will end up helping cash flow, which was a surprise to me. So, in my position, it makes sense to expand the portfolio and then also to provide more housing in San Diego, because we are extremely constricted right now. Anybody that lives here knows how tight it is on inventory. And then the bottom line is we just don't have a lot of areas to construct new property. So
of course,
it feels like it's a win-win for various reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And to talk off that, the property that we just finished building the 2 ADUs on, the new ADUs, the new apartments were garages before. So for the average person that is listening, that's maybe they're thinking, where do you build these new units? So we took down 4 old single stall garages that were mostly being used for storage by people, and built 2 new apartments that can then help go into adding more housing for the community. So yeah, that's kind of a component when we look at properties. I know you do the same, of add value. How can you add to your monthly revenue, and how can you make a more interesting property? And garages are a great component of that, or any sort of space that's not being used on the property. If it has a huge empty lot behind it, or a huge yard that's not being used. So those are kind of ideal factors in the ability to add more units to the space.
Anything else you've learned through that part of the process with building ADUs? Anything else you could share that was maybe a surprise? I don't know.
A surprise. Everyone has a fee. The city has lots of fees,
Lots of fees with the city, that's for sure.
Yeah, so make sure, when you step through the process, you understand what it costs. I think it would be good to evaluate, what an average price per square foot is for construction, and maybe apartment grade construction. Every level of construction has different costs, but understand that and what your construction budget might entail, what your architect is going to charge, what the city permitting fee is going to cost, because it is a big number and you wouldn't want to step halfway through this process and not understand the full price tag. So definitely get that information up front.
And I would just say too, just to add on to that, whatever budget you're expecting, whatever the quote is, et cetera, add 30% to that and double the time that they're telling you it takes to build, because there is a lot to go through with the permit process just to begin with. Anybody living in San Diego that does anything in construction or anywhere in that realm knows that subcontractors are very difficult right now. They're all busy as could be. So
Yes.
It is difficult to get people to come work on your projects, just bottom line.
Yep.
So that's great. I think that a lot of helpful information for those out there that do want to think about the ADU aspect to their property.
Yes, and there's there's so much more I could share.
Right.
So many more tips and helpful advice. So if you are thinking about going through that process, feel free to reach out to us. We have a lot more information we can share on that.
Awesome. All right, let's talk condos here. I mean, getting into Pacific Beach real estate is challenging right
Yes.
now.
Mm-hmm.
So often, getting in by ways of a condo is a smart move. So tell us a little bit about some of these communities that you think are worth the consideration, and I got to hear about this one that you need to avoid. I'm just dying to hear about this. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm born and raised in Pacific Beach, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the ones you should consider versus maybe stay away from. My number one to consider would be Capri by the Sea. This is just an absolute standout condo building. It's a high rise. They don't allow those anymore. It's right on the ocean front, so it is just incredible beach views, sunset views. It does come with a price tag.
It sure does.
But the interesting thing about Capri is you can vacation rent there. It almost operates as a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
The HOA doesn't have the standard 30-day rental restruction.
Yeah, very rare to find HOAs that allow short-term rentals. Just something to consider.
It's super rare. You pretty much don't see anything throughout San Diego anymore that's less than a 30-day rental. But
now, one thing we do have to remind our viewers about is that there is a new law in San Diego, so you just don't automatically get to vacation rent your condo at Capri.
Correct.
So starting back in May, we have a new ordinance that says you have to have a permit through the city. Now, the good news is at the time of this filming, there's just under 1,000 permits left that you could apply for. Once you get it, you got it. You can vacation rent. There are some things that you have to keep up on as far as the city's concerned. We're not going to dive deep into that, but just remember, you still have to have that permit.
Absolutely. It's a good point. But yeah, that's why Capri is a standout for me. I mean, just the ability to really capitalize on all the vacationers that are coming in. People stay there at the Capri year after year. And then that killer location, really tough to find, a high rise with views from every floor right out on the ocean front. So Capri's number one.
Yeah, and as Jamie mentioned, the high-rise aspect of it, too, we have a 30-foot height restriction within San Diego. So yeah, we have a height restriction within San Diego. So unless some zoning changes were to happen, you are limited at 30 feet. And granted, let me be honest, it's nice because our beachfront does not look like Miami, okay?
Right.
So I'm a big proponent of having this height restriction, but the bottom line is when you're buying into something like Capri, you're buying into something that will not exist any longer. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's a high rise in Pacific Beach. So
yeah, a few of these buildings snuck in right before that ordinance was put into place, where they decided they weren't going to wall off the ocean like some of the other cities in the United States, Miami. So a few of these snuck in, and it probably will never be duplicated again.
Exactly. So tell us about what's your second one to consider.
Yeah, my second one, very similar product. Pacific Towers, right on Cass Street in Pacific Beach, is another one of those high rises that snuck in. They're the only two condo high rises in the beach area.
Correct. Residential high rise.
Residential high rise, yep. And the views are just incredible. Like we talked about at Capri, you sit above everyone else. It's a 12-story building, and I'm a little biased because I do own a condo in there myself.
I was waiting for that part of this to come out.
But I do find that those two buildings, Capri and Pacific Towers, are just something that will never be duplicated. The views are unmatched because there's nothing else in the peripheral area of Pacific Beach that blocks it. And those are just really two incredible properties. I think Pacific Towers is amazing because that little stretch of Cass right there, coffee shops, boutiques, restaurants, all walkable within a block out your door. You're 3 blocks to the ocean, walk down to Sunset, and Pacific Towers would be my number 2 in Pacific
I always
Beach.
like the pool area, Pacific Tower too. It's like what, 3rd floor
Yeah.
or so. You get a little bit above the rest. It has this nice sunny exposure all day long. And also interesting little fact about Pacific Tower, I'm sure you know this, is there was going to be a second tower
Yes.
built. My understanding is that they were looking to get that built after the ordinance went in, and then it got denied.
Right.
So, interesting that it is only one tower, and that again adds to the uniqueness of it. So, great property. I agree with Jamie on this one for sure.
Absolutely. If you get a chance to look at anything in Pacific Towers, they come up here and there, but not super often. Definitely jump on
What about
it.
you? You thinking about selling?
No way.
Okay, there you go. So what would be the number 3 complex on your list of condos to consider?
Absolutely. So my number 3 would be the Plaza. That's kind of in central Pacific Beach, kind of right in the central area. And it is just an awesome entry level way to get to the beach. As Greg mentioned at the start, Pacific Beach is tough to buy into. A lot of the coastal communities are really tough to afford. And I think the Plaza has a lot of units. There's a lot of condos in there.
512 units? It's big.
To know that off the top of my head.
Right. I used to be an owner there, so there you go.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a big complex, a lot of turnover, people are moving in, moving out. And I just think it's a great way if you're really focused on getting into the Pacific Beach area, buying into that market, that you can get in at an entry-level price point.
Yeah, generally, with the exception of a few units that come up here and there, other smaller complexes, it is generally the least expensive option to buy into Pacific Beach. Other things to note about it as well, it's VA and FHA approved, which is another challenging thing if you are using a VA or FHA loan. This complex is approved. The other one I like to add again, because I did own there briefly, is it has great amenities.
It does.
4 pools, tennis courts, secure. So it really has a lot of bang for the buck. There's no question about that.
That's a great way to put it. If you're looking to get into Pacific Beach and your budget is a little bit more limited, that would be a great place to start looking.
Yeah, agreed. Now, the one we've been dying for, what is this condo complex that we need to avoid?
Okay, so my one to avoid, it's actually a couple of condo complexes right along Sail Bay.
Wait, along Sail Bay? That's a great area.
It is a great area, but don't be fooled. When you see a condo come on the market there and it's 500 grand less than all of the others, you better think to yourself for the moment and think back to this video, because you would want to avoid the land lease condo complexes.
Oh, right.
So a few of those along the bay are under what we call a land lease, and that means you don't technically own a portion of the land. And when that land lease expires, which can be at any point, there's an expiration date on all the land leases, there could be a moment where the owner of that land decides to sell, and therefore you would walk away with nothing. You would not, unless they settled with you or did some sort of special circumstance, you would not be entitled to anything on your asset. Yeah. So I know sometimes a land lease can work for someone.
Right.
Like we said, they're much more affordable than the surrounding units that are for sale. So maybe you want a short-term play. Maybe you think the land lease expiration date is way far in the future and it doesn't affect you, and you just want to live an amazing, sunny, beautiful life bayfront. Then that could be a fit for you. But something to consider if a land lease is a fit for your purchase.
Yeah, they're not nearly as prominent as they are in some areas. I know Hawaii has quite a few land
Yes.
leases with their properties there. And I mean, generally speaking, the ones that we've seen here do get renewed, but it is a risk to consider. And, you know, the other thing is if you're not buying with cash, the lender's going to want to take a hard look at that land
Absolutely.
lease. Generally, if I remember correctly, it's about 30 years they need on it before they'll even consider financing the property, which makes sense. So I know I've got a list of 5, and I think you agree with them. So let's talk about number 1, the schools.
I feel like, I mean, the schools in La Jolla are hands down some of the best throughout all of San Diego County. And it's a huge, huge factor when families are considering where to move. They're considering the schools if they have kids that will be going through the school system. And La Jolla is definitely sought after for schools.
Yeah, how many times do you hear La Jolla schools, La Jolla schools?
Yep.
Yeah, all the time. All right, so number 2, I mean, this is just all around the weather, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I am speaking from experience. It's really nice with kids to be able to get outside, enjoy sunny weather. It's hard to be cooped up in the house. And throughout San Diego, we're just so fortunate to have excellent weather most year round. But yeah, at La Jolla, I mean, you got sunshine, beaches, and you can really just get the kiddos out.
Yeah,
So
very little rain to deal with.
Nope.
Definitely no snow.
No, definitely no
I'll take it
snow.
all day long. Number 3, I would have to say would be transportation and the ease of.
Right, absolutely. From La Jolla, you're 15, 20 minutes to San Diego airport. And if you're traveling to see family or traveling to see friends, you're trying to keep that travel time to a minimum with kids. So a short commute to the airport is always ideal. And here in San Diego, we're so fortunate to be able to get to the airport pretty quickly. And yeah, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yep. So number 4 on this list would be the amount of activities that there are to do with your kids, right?
Absolutely. We have so many amazing activities in San Diego. We have amazing beaches in La Jolla. And then as you head further into the city, we have SeaWorld and we have Balboa Park and we have the zoo and just so mmany attractions that people come here to visit. And we just are so lucky we have them at the tips of our fingers.
And I'd say the number 5 reason why La Jolla is such a great place to raise a family would be community. Now, Jamie and I both live in the Bird Rock community. And I mean, does it get any better than that? I mean, let's be honest.
We absolutely love living where we live. Just we know all of our neighbors, safe. And I feel like the community is really strong there. You have the 4th of July parade. You have incredible trick-or-treating on Halloween. And there's just a huge community aspect right along the little strip there. Tons of local restaurants that everyone supports. And I love living in the community we do.
Awesome. And here's one bonus reason why raising a family in La Jolla is so great. That would be access to healthcare.
Yes, absolutely. You don't always think of this when you're thinking about, where to move or where to relocate, but close proximity to great doctors, great hospitals is a huge factor. You don't want to be driving super long commutes if you have an emergency. And in La Jolla, you have UCSD, you have Rady's, you have Sharp, you have so many excellent facilities really, really close.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jamie, for coming out. It's a big, scary world out there for a lot of you when it comes to this type of stuff. We're here for you. We will help you evaluate anything that you would like to take a look at to see if it makes sense. In fact, I have a great tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet that allows you to plug in all the numbers to really get an idea of what your investment looks like. This is fundamental in analyzing any property that you're looking to purchase. If this is something that you could find helpful, comment invest below, and I'll get you a copy of that. Thank you for listening.